We're back. This is the top 15 franchises that need a reboot because of one reason or another, and we are looking at the top 5 in this video. You've already got the rest. This is the episode 200 spectacular, but of course, episode 200 would have been the first part, and so technically this is like already 201. But I mean, hey, they were made together. So who's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? What's in the top 5? You might be looking at one of those games right now, but if you know me, you probably know that I love this game and I really want it to come back, or the franchise at least. But first, we're gonna have, that's right, some unhonorable mentions. Why unhonorable? Well, because they technically don't fit, but man, I love me Frogger. Frogger, I can't wait to get a reboot of that. Just completely change things, maybe even put it in 3D, make it... Wait, what? What? They already made them in 3D. On the PlayStation. They made several. Really? Yeah, in PlayStation 2. Alright, forget it then. Alright, moving on. So the first one for honorable mention is Assassin's Creed. Now, you could argue that Assassin's Creed is kind of a different game each time. The only thing that I really don't care for is the whole Anubis thing. Getting inside this VR machine and going back into your memories. I really think Assassin's Creed could work just being in the time period itself and not having the entire future part to it. That's the only thing I would kind of reboot and get rid of that kind of stuff. So that means each Assassin's Creed would be all about the new character, which is fine for me.
What the Jesus?
And then there's What the Jesus. This is Dead Island. This is also another game I always kind of wish would get rebooted. Mostly because, well, now Techland isn't developing them anymore, and the other group that tried to develop the proper Dead Island 2, well, that ended up getting canceled. But, yeah, Techland wasn't the greatest at doing American accents or trying to tell a interesting story. If they just made the whole series maybe a bit tongue-in-cheek, and maybe that was their intent, it could kind of work. Like, Who Do You Voodoo Bitch? I never really liked that, but that's because I thought they were trying to take it seriously. If it was all tongue-in-cheek all the way through, maybe it could work. But quite honestly, this got pushed back on my list because the game mechanics are fine. You can always restart at any point. So even, Dying Light was not too bad. Mechanically, it was great, but yeah, the story didn't really work too much. And then there's my more controversial kind of entry of Halo. Would you reboot Halo? I mean, there's so many games. I just thought maybe starting over would be an easy way to clean the slate and maybe tell the story a bit more concise, because dear lord, when we got to Halo 2, that story was completely forgettable for the most part. I still believe that most fans don't really understand what was talked about at the end of Halo 2, and I think there's good reason for it, but ultimately, there's so much stuff, they could just change things in the background retroactively, and we probably wouldn't really notice. And then I thought about Hitman. I kind of didn't like the whole bald killer clone aspect of it, being grown in a test tube in a lab with all your other little clone buddies, and they're apparently all dead or suicidal, or I don't know. It was in one of the games, and quite honestly, they've already kind of rebooted the franchise the way they're doing it now. Hitman is basically fresh out of not the test tube, but the training missions, and he's going on his first set of hits. So they've already kind of rebooted by basically not acknowledging other stuff in the franchise. So in a way, this kind of really is for the best, and I didn't really feel the need to put it in there. But for right now, let's get back to those top franchises that need to be rebooted, starting with number 5. Number 5. So quite possibly one of the more popular games that came from Rare after the acquisition from Microsoft was Viva Pinata. It really was one of their last games that actually got a lot of critical praise to some degree. and that's really kind of a shame. I mean, it actually is a beautiful concept. You know, it looks weird. I mean, the whole idea that all these animals are made out of piñatas, or they are piñatas, the ruffians coming to destroy them, and other animals attacking each other, but they basically just shoot little pieces of candy at them. You got the doctor that heals them, and you can create grass and plants and shrubs and put walkways down, and it's all a really intriguing thing, and it really did kind of, it kind of was ahead of the times, quite honestly, because it let you kind of customize your own garden, and you had these creatures and whatnot, and yeah, I guess you could argue that Pokemon was doing this for decades before this, but this was before Minecraft, and unfortunately, the reason why I feel that the Viva Pinata series really never caught on back in the day was because Minecraft hadn't come out yet. And what do I mean by that? Well, they could have taken quite a few ideas from Minecraft. For one thing, the size of the world was always, even at the biggest size that you could get, it was always kind of a really limiting factor. This garden that I have here is pretty much the limits. Give or take an animal, or maybe a few pieces of walkway. But yeah, for the most part, this is kind of your limit, you know. You can only have so many piñatas in there. I've got a few statues. I've got, you know, maybe one walkway that kind of makes an L shape through the entire garden. I've got some water stuff in there because I obviously want the crocodiles. And I think the chewy corns need some water too. And, you know, it's all really cute and very kid-friendly, and it's kind of a fun game, but quite honestly, the two games that they made were virtually identical. That just the fact that they added a couple of new environments, but you could only go there in order to capture the piñatas. You couldn't actually stay there and do anything. And yeah, you're looking at the limits of the game. I mean, you think you can craft everything, but you can't. In order to make more animals, you need to have their specific habitat for that animal so that they can do the love-making minigame in order to produce offspring. But you can only have so many of them because they take up memory as well. So you're probably only going to have 2 or 3 at a time, and you're constantly going to be either making babies for the current houses that you have and then destroying other ones so that you can get other piñatas to basically mate and make more of that. So you can't keep everything that you want in the garden, and it feels very limiting. And then there's the pop-ups. Oh my gosh, every time you level up, you get a pop-up. Every time you get a new shovel upgrade, there's a pop-up. There's constant pop-ups that really slow this game down nowadays. And I feel like if they did more of a basic approach, this could be a really fun game. Number 4. Dear sweet Buffalo Jesus, Perfect Dark Zero, and Perfect Dark in general needs to be rebooted. They really made a misstep when Perfect Dark Zero came out, and at the launch of the Xbox 360. Now, when you go back to Call of Duty 2, which also was a launch title, was also sold very well, Perfect Dark was right behind it, kind of in sales, at least to start off with. I was actually kind of surprised so many people were buying Perfect Dark, especially considering since the original on Nintendo 64 only sold about, 1.6 million copies? Whereas the original GoldenEye, you know, was doing like, gangbusters, 6-7 million copies. So it's, I mean, seriously, like, what is this game franchise now? It's the gun wireframe models spinning, you know, next to a completely radically changed Joanna Dark. I mean, seriously, like, they literally took 10 years off her character model, gave her short, pink hair, bright colored. She might as well be, you know, making wisecracks and chewing bubblegum. They made her so fucking young. You know, this is not the Joanna Dark we had. This is not, you know, the Joanna Dark that was originally presented to us. You know, what we originally had was basically like a female James Bond. The comparisons have been made before, and And that's perfectly okay, perfectly legit. Oh yeah, Samsung is the TV of the future. Well, I guess they actually got that right. But yeah, in the original game, Joanna Dark it's kind of hard to pick apart, maybe how old that she is or isn't, but, she looks like a woman, I mean, late 20s, at least in her 30s, quite possibly. She's done a lot of missions. This isn't her first rodeo. It's not her first training mission. She is a competent woman that can take care of things, but they completely changed that into just another young, retarded female that seems like she doesn't want to listen to authority and says whatever a whole lot.
What's the target location?
Joanna Dark had a distinguished kind of voice too, and that's gone as well. I mean, if you fell in love with Perfect Dark, it was because, this was basically a female James Bond, that had different ways of doing stuff, but it just didn't work. Perfect Dark Zero was pretty horrible. I mean, of course, the jump button still isn't there. I mean, the game not only hasn't aged well, but it just wasn't that great back in the day. Let's remake it. Number 3. So yeah, not so much the orange box, but I really think they should just remake Half-Life. I mean, seriously, think about it. We got, for us console players, we got a treatment of the original Half-Life, supposedly on the Dreamcast that never ended up coming out. That's how long ago it's been. We're talking early 2000s. We did get a version that came out on the original Xbox, and then eventually we got some updated versions that came out on the 360, along with Episode 1 and Episode 2, which were new at the time. But I don't think most gamers even know what the hell Half-Life is anymore. It's been so long since we've seen the sequel. Now, of course, the hardcore gamers, they know. The PC gamers, of course, they're thrusted into all the mods and whatnot that you have for Half-Life. But for console gamers, they really don't know what Half-Life is pretty much anymore. I mean, I believe the original Half-Life was PlayStation 2 at the time. If I got that right, I can't remember. I think that was the only console version. Maybe not even that. But yeah, the mythical Half-Life 2 Episode 3, people are pretty much, guaranteed they're not going to get it in their lifetime. And Half-Life 3 outright, we're probably not going to get that either. But what if they reimagined the series? What if they went back and they rechanged some things that would make a lot more sense, that could tie into future projects a lot easier? That could be kind of cool. Maybe they would do that. Maybe they would keep some of the basic characters and then maybe change a few other things to do it. And quite honestly, this is a series that kind of hinges on knowing what the events are that end up transcribing in Half-Life 2 and at the end of the other episodes. I mean, seriously, not many console gamers have even seen scenes like this. Like, what are these guys? Are these the Murlocs from the Abe's Odyssey games? Is that who they are? The ones that go... I mean, are these guys stealing the woman and taking them into her game, and they're going to make her a Murloc, and then they're going to... or Murlurk, or whatever they are. Is that what they're gonna do? Is Abe gonna show up? I mean, the mystery man here too. He's also a cool concept, but maybe they could do something in a remake. Maybe they could bring him back and make him more mysterious and make him maybe not as X-Files-y as he might have originally been. But then again, maybe he's supposed to be the smoking man, and so be it. Maybe embrace that and give us something different. Please? Number 2. So Dead Space. Yeah, we haven't heard about this game series in a while. Well, that's mostly because Visceral then went on to make Battlefield Hardline. Yeah, kind of a step down. But seriously, the original Dead Space is often considered a great and fabulous survival horror game. in the vein of Resident Evil 4, and obviously a lot of inspiration came from Resident Evil 4, and I think the developers have kind of acknowledged that. And they've actually made some improvements, like being able to buy ammunition if you really needed it, something that was never there in Resident Evil 4. And they actually do a pretty good job of balancing jump scares and actual, terror and moments where you just don't quite know what's going to happen. The sequel really blew everything off the doors. The enemies were attacking en masse. They were attacking in bigger numbers. They were bigger and faster and more powerful. Everything that Jerry Bruckheimer would probably enjoy, along with Cliff Bleszinski. I mean, bigger, better, faster is basically the tagline for his penis nowadays. Or bigger, badder, more badass. Yeah, that's it. That's Cliffy B's fucking tattooed across his penis, as far as I know. But yeah, the original Dead Space did a lot, and the second one really did amp things up. And the third one, well, they added co-op to it. But, if you still played single player, the thrills were there, the scares were there, and the intensity was still actually there. Playing in co-op, was it different? Sure. Was the scare still there? It was just different. It was nice to see the game actually do both and actually change its story accordingly. That was probably two of the best things that they really did. They really amped it up, and if you still go into Dead Space 3 nowadays, you'll actually be kind of impressed with the visuals. They really pushed that 7th generation of gaming consoles, to their limit. I mean, there's lots of detail. The fine tuning of the weapon customization is pretty sweet, even if it kind of ruins some things, and you can basically make the single most powerful weapon in the game because you're basically putting all your points into one thing. But still, it's a nice added value. And seriously, if you get a chance to pick up Dead Space 3 on cheap, obviously the original is backwards compatible on Xbox One, and it's going to be great to have number 2 and number 3 eventually make it there, fingers crossed. But yeah, Dead Space is not only a great series, but I really think it needs to be remade, because, well, the whole Planet Cracker kind of thing, and, Isaac Clarke with, along with his girlfriend. Seriously, it's really hard to go back to the original Dead Space, because, well, that ending is basically all you're building up to, for the most part, aside from not having as many enemies. They really topped themselves in Dead Space 2, where you could actually detach the spiky limbs and grab them in midair and then throw them back at the enemies. You're going to be trying to do that in Dead Space 1 a lot, and you're not going to be able to do it, unfortunately. But, so the whole Planet Cracker thing, they don't really go into much detail in the game themselves on how it's done, but I've seen the anime, the 2 animated versions. Whether or not you would consider it anime is debatable, but they had some weird theories to how the things worked, and the whole idea of the captain getting stabbed in the eyeball with a needle, and they really need to do something different. And that's why I think they really could just reboot it. I mean, it's been a long time, right? We haven't seen anything on the 8th generation console, so why not? Why not come out with another Dead Space game? Why not deliver something that's a little bit different? Give us a different character. Give us a different circumstance. And I never really liked the whole Church of Scientology thing. The fact that people praise and worship this alien artifact, just because they think it's gonna, save them or something? I kind of never really liked that. Does it make sense in a real world kind of thing? Well, I don't know, but I really think that even if people are that gullible, I think just leave the whole religion thing out of it, or the whole religious aspect to it. Sure, the military wants to make them into weapons and, blah, 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 but I really think that remaking this, keeping all the intensity of it, but setting it up differently and trying to introduce a whole new generation of people to this kind of terror that they created, and making it more available on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. I think they can have a real winner here. Sure, it's backwards compatible, but that first game has a lot of great corridors that it's kind of hard to play through sometimes. And quite honestly, the second game might be a little too intense. And the third game is just insane, the amount of stuff they throw at you so fast before you even get explanations. So yeah, let's remake Dead Space and give the new kids something to play. Number 1. Oh, what's it gonna be? What could it possibly be? What's gonna be the number 1 series that needs to be rebooted? Is it? Oh, you guys know it's gonna be Resident Evil. Of course, it's Resident Evil. Jeez. So Resident Evil is my number 1 series for getting rebooted, and you might be saying, well, why? It's perfect. It's great. It's awesome. Well, besides the general backlash that Resident Evil 5 and 6 get, it has a very convoluted plot, because a lot of the games, especially like the first 3 on PlayStation, not to mention other games that have been added since then, they all revolve really around Raccoon City and the one single incident that happened there. Some games have taken place during the exact same events. Some games have taken place slightly before, like, Resident Evil 0. And some games have just basically shat all over the bed when it comes to plot or, pretty much anything when it comes to Resident Evil. But yeah, the plot has been kind of convoluted for the most part, and no part thanks to the American side of the game basically translating things into kind of whatever, so it doesn't really represent what's actually happening in the cutscenes for a lot of games. This is pretty evident in Resident Evil 4, where some cutscenes kind of allude to how things work, but then the dialogue and the notes and whatnot are kind of different, so it doesn't really help. I mean, Leon is assigned to, watch the president's daughter. He's also part of the Secret Service, but the president's daughter doesn't even know that he's part of her detail. I don't know, but was he asked to come and rescue her anyway, or he's also part of the CIA, and he also was at Raccoon City, and it's pretty hard to say. I mean, the original game obviously came out around 95, 96, depending on, what was it, 96? Kind of depending on what country of origin you're from. But, even by Resident Evil 4 standards, since the game actually takes place in 98, that actually lets them advance, a few years. But, Leon's already 27 years old in Resident Evil 4. How much older can he get? You got to realize that all of these characters and all these Resident Evil games, they're basically all being focused around this one single event. And, now we're starting to kind of add on the years to the Raccoon City incident, where, these characters are 10, 12 years older, than they were in that original incident, kind of depending on how you look at it. And, 98, early 2000s, yeah, and quite honestly, we're kind of getting to the point where these characters are going to be 20 years older than what they were at Raccoon City. I don't know if people are ready to accept a 45-year-old Leon walking around, complaining about back pain and still with the quips, but yeah, I really think Resident Evil needs to be kind of rebooted. And you could be saying, well, Stryker, they're already kind of doing that with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Well, yeah, if you basically translate the title, it's called Resident Evil. Well, because obviously Resident Evil is called Biohazard in Japan. So that kind of gives you an idea of maybe where they're going with the whole biohazard aspect. But yeah, I mean, that could be kind of its own thing. I have seen that it is supposed to be Resident Evil 7. How in the world is it related to the Resident Evil storyline that we know? We don't know, because ultimately if it was going to start completely over, maybe it is doing that. But yeah, trying to keep everything lined up with an event that, essentially, from the gaming world, started 20 years ago. Pretty soon the game world is going to catch up, and it's going to be an incident that happened 20 years ago. And in Resident Evil 6, the president's talking about the fact he's going to bring out the real truth, and it's like, don't people have cell phones and stuff now? But, who knows? The internet wasn't even around when the original Resident Evil came out. Well, not as big as it is today. But, so yeah, Capcom, let's remake it. Let's just start over again and get some new zombies in there. But keep our favorite characters. We like Leon and Chris. That's a good list. So there you go. There's the top 15 game franchises that need to be rebooted. Why top 15? Because I need to do at least 4 more than the Nostalgia Critic just to keep up. Keep in mind, all this footage had to be recorded off of an Xbox One, because that's how Upload and Upload Studio works. So if there's a franchise that's on PlayStation that I kind of wanted to include, I couldn't, because there's no way for me to record that footage. Sure, I could probably add something like that later on in Movie Maker, but in order to keep my video quality at least respectable, I had to just do it this way. So please forgive any technical issues or my technical limitations for doing a list like this. It is what it is, but I know I wanted to make something special for episode 200 and, well, therefore 201. So, hey, if you guys want to keep on supporting me, destroy that like button and I will keep on providing it.